And we'll see, as if by magic, whether we appear, because it does say my hair is perfect. Oh my goodness, more people have appeared than us.
My hair is not perfect. I'm having a weird hair day, but who cares?
At least you got hair.
Well, that is true. I have.
Some of us are follically challenged. That's all I'm saying.
There you go.
Well, I do say, the old gods made very beautiful heads. The rest they covered with hair. So that's all I'm saying.
There you go.
That's all I'm saying. So welcome to
Chapter 27.
This is the 11th go at this. Oh my goodness gracious me!
I think we're going to need another because there's still.
Yeah, we got. I don't think we're going to get it in because there's.
There's no way we're doing this
chapters.
Tonight, but
yeah, it's 5 more chapters. We're not going to do that tonight.
Yeah.
So it may be
2 times
two,
possibly 3
at the
50
outside, because depends how we go. But we're going to make a start anyway. And thank you everybody who's joined us. Thank you also for the super chats that made this possible. We appreciate you very, very, very much. Would you like to start?
Chapter.
If you're sitting comfortably, we'll begin.
If there is one thing that is worse than another, it is Christmas when you aren't feeling festive.
Bah humbug.
Not being officially in mourning, I was not entitled to any overt display of grief, so had to bottle it up inside me the best I might. Sally, I think, guessed, but I could not discuss it with her because there was so much I could not tell her, and so little the simple old soul would have understood if I had. Scotty was sick, and anyway, he wasn't sympathetic. So I went round to the George and told the wine waiter that I had been crossed in love, and had he anything in the cellars that could console me. I woke up the next morning and Sally collected me, saying that Christmas often used to take her old man the same way. That evening my sister had a party for the friendly girls and insisted that I should lend a hand.
Oh dear.
I tried to get out of it and go to bed, for I was more dead than alive. But she kept on at me. And finally, the worm turned. And I agreed.
And I agree, yeah, the worm turned. That's an old British expression, the worm turned.
Whatever.
You never heard that before, I bet.
No.
There you go.
I kissed the bloody lot under the mistletoe till my sister had hysterics in the study and phoned for the vicar. Then I shoved brandy and champagne in the temperance shandygaff and cleared off.
Oh dear.
Okay. By the time the vicar arrived, the girls had drunk the shandygaff. I found bits of mistletoe all over the house the next morning. I bet it was some party.
I bet you got the friendly girls' rat arse.
You got them friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so, yeah.
He must have found them genuinely friendly girls for once, to judge from the distribution of the mistletoe. I was very glad to get back into my harness next morning. I had had enough of the holiday making and Christmas revelry, and so, I think, had my sister. Sally was seedy, too. She had been Christmasing at the house of a married son, and had disagreed with her. In small hours of the morning, she was taken with the heart attack, to which I had to minister with what was left over from the shandygaff. As I went out to the bank, I saw cylinders of oxygen being taken into Scotty's house. So altogether, it was some Christmas. But the fun hadn't finished yet. I was received at the office by Scotty's secretary, whose poor little countenance had decorated with a carefully camouflaged black eye, blushing and squirming. She asked me if I had meant to give her what I had given her. I began to wonder whether, amid the battle, murder, and sudden death poison, had gotten in to the chocolates. And I asked her what was amiss. And she asked me if I knew what I had given her. And I told her that I bought them as chocolates. She said it wasn't chocolates at all, but jewelry.
Dun, dun, dun. Then I knew what had happened. Treth had given me Morgan's star sapphires to put in the bank till the extremely unlikely event of a clause in Morgan's will becoming operative.
Oh dear.
And in the dark of the garage, I had taken up the wrong parcel out the back of the car where I dumped all the dunnage. The chocolates were safely in the strong room at the bank, and Scotty's secretary had the sapphires. Now, I have to tell you, I had a feeling all along he's going to wind up marrying this woman.
But isn't she already married? How'd she get
No,
the black eye?
she's Scotty's secretary. We're about to find out.
Why'd she get a black eye?
I don't know, but anyway, we're digressing.
All
We're digressing.
All right.
I apologised hastily and abjectly for my mistake and explained that the sapphires did not belong to me, but that I was responsible for them, and I must ask her for them back. She looked as if about to expire with mortification, and I explained that if she hadn't got them, her stepfather had taken them from her and was hanging on to them. Oh dear. And that, I thought, explains the black eye. She had probably gone counter to parental authority in her honesty. If she had said nothing, the chocolates would have stayed at the bank till the mummified, and then she would have got away with the sapphires. Of course, star sapphires are not worth as much as the unflawed kind, but even so, Morgan's set would have represented a small fortune to a girl in her position. Blushing, very self-consciously, the girl tendered me a letter. This was inside, she said. This is how I knew they were not for me. I took the envelope and saw it was addressed to the recipient of the sapphires. If you don't mind my mentioning, said Scotty's secretary, I think you ought to seal it up again and not read it till you give it to the person it is meant for. So, then and there, in her presence, I sealed it up. Then I asked her who her stepfather was, as I now had the task before me of recovering the sapphires from his hands. And to judge by her eye, he was heavy-handed. When she told me who he was, you could have knocked me down with a feather, for he was Muckley, the lowest pork butcher in the town. He hung out in the bend of the river where our local slum was, I have spoken of before, and he had a 14th century house that would have been all right as ye olde tea shop, but was damned insanitary as a butcher's. I'd been getting a move on about that slum, having bought the house the cedar came from, and Muckley was organising the opposition. He was that sort. It amazed me the refined, educated girl like Scotty's secretary should have come out of that awful pork shop, but I remembered that Muckley was her stepfather and not her father.
I asked her what her name was, and she told me Molly Coke. The name woke memories, and I asked her if she were any connection of my old schoolmaster, and she told me she was his daughter. Then I remembered her as a little dark-eyed, pale-faced thing who used to play in the playground while we were in school, and come in when we came out. I wondered what had become of the lovely for whom my late dominie had deserted his wife and family, and incidentally his means of livelihood, for since his wives had remarried, he was obviously dead, divorcing being beyond the means of the likes of them. That's quite a sentence.
Wasn't it? Bit of a run-on sentence there.
So
Miss
leaving
Frith.
Molly Coke in charge of the office, I went round to interview the amiable Muckley and make him disgorge the sapphires. His beastly shop wasn't open. But there was a terrific screeching coming out from the back of the premises, so it evidently soon would be. I saw the cruelty to animals man craning his neck out of the top window down the street, trying to get a line on what was happening. He had a down on Muckley, who was popularly credited with omitting to kill the pig before he started making sausages. That's terrible.
Yep.
I waited till the screeching died away in a wail, and then began to hammer the door. After a bit, this elicited Mrs. Muckley, late Coke. I remembered her as a quiet, neutral sort of creature who seldom spoke, but contented herself with waiting on her flamboyant husband, and was probably, if the truth were known, the man of the family. I certainly should not have known her. Her hair was quite white, and she looked to me as if she hadn't got much longer in this world. I told her my errand, and she flushed nervously and went to fetch her husband. I could hear his voice booming away out in the back, and he didn't sound amiable. The place smelt too awful for words. having been shut up and unaired out over the holidays. Presently he appeared, covered with pig and offensively hearty, whereas I expected him from the noises of that I would be lucky if I had to get my own black eye, and proceeded to do the finest lying I had ever heard, as an auctioneer and an estate agent in a connoisseur of lying. Yes, he said, I told Molly she'd have to hand 'em back, those stones. They wasn't for her. But it's no good her saying, I've got 'em because I haven't. She's got 'em. You make her hand 'em back, Mr. Maxwell. The thieving little hussy. So she's done the snitching, has she? Said I. Yes, he said. She's done the snitching.
And did she do the eye blackening too? He gave me a nasty look. Then I set to and told him what I thought of him. He looked surprised. He hadn't expected anything like that from Mr. Wilfrid Maxwell, the only son of his mother, and she a widow. He went and fetched the sapphires, meek as Moses. All the same, I wondered what sort of a reception poor Molly Coke would meet with when she got home. He would have to do something to restore his deflated amour propre. When I got back to the office, I told her the line Muckley had taken with me. I also gave her a bowdlerized version of the line I had taken with him, and said he was to let me know if she had any trouble with him. And she was to let me know if she had any trouble with him, and I would call round again and say it with flowers. But she never complained, so I concluded that she had nothing to complain about, beyond, of course, what anyone would have to complain about who had to associate with Muckley.
She has to live in that pig squalor.
We shuffled along for the next few days, I picking up the threads of the business as best I could with Molly Coke's help, for I had been leaving everything to Scotty. We had half a dozen assorted clerks and clerklets, but no one had any head worth mentioning except Molly. Scotty believing in keeping everything in his own hands as being the best way of ensuring efficiency and honesty. So it may be in normal times, but any disorganisation hits you hard. I had to take the weekly auctions in the cattle market, that which I hate nothing more, and had some nastiness with Muckley over a very dud lot of pigs he put in, and that I referred to the sanitary inspector. He and his farmer friends tried to bounce me with their superior knowledge of pigs, but I exercised my rights as a licensed auctioneer and rode roughshod over them. I mayn't know much about pigs, but I know a lot about Muckley, and there must be something pretty wrong with any pigs he would risk he wouldn't risk sausaging. Oh dear God.
Wow.
I was right too, for the whole party were tubulica. Okay, by that they have TB. All right. Well, things were beginning to look up a bit with me, and I was getting my sleep back when the next blow fell. I came down one morning and, wondering why I hadn't heard Sally stirring, went up to her room and found her lying dead on the floor.
Aww.
Poor old soul. I suppose it was merciful. She'd been ailing a lot lately and getting very tired, and nothing would induce her to have help. It was the way I should wish to go when my time comes, if I have the choice, but I don't suppose I shall have. Asthma wears you down, it doesn't knock you out. I can never see why we mourn for the dead. It is much more rational to mourn for the bereaved.
I owed a lot to Sally. She was a real good soul. My sister was annoyed with me for being so upset over the loss of a servant. Said it was undignified. She would soon find me another, I said. What about a friendly girl? I had taken rather a fancy to them, and she was always trying to get them nice, refined jobs. And that settled her. She would have had nothing further to do with the matter after that, which was what I had intended. So I asked Molly Coke to see what she could fit me up with. But it wasn't as simple as it seemed, apparently. The municipal elections were coming on shortly, and parish relief was being doled out in dollops, so chars were hard to come by. She said I would have to make shift with an office cleaner till she had time to search out something for me. So she sent over a horrible cross between slattern and a
Virago?
I don't know what either of those things are. But
well, you read on. I'm going to have to go look them
cross
up.
between a slattern and a virago.
These are new words to me too.
There's a lot of new words.
I must look.
I had always thought the offices looked pretty dingy, and now I knew why. I asked Molly why we didn't fire the creature, and she said that Scotty's wife took an interest in her. I said it would be much more helpful if Scotty's father-in-law took an interest in her. And for the first time in my experience, Molly laughed. Mrs. Leake's deficiencies did not matter so much when I was up and doing as I fit at the house. But it was all different matter when I went down with one of my goes of asthma. Benger's food, on which I rely on these occasions, is by no means foolproof, and Mrs. Leake's was a fool.
So, slattern is an untidy or sloppy woman, whereas a virago is a domineering, violent, or bad-tempered woman. So there you go. New words to me.
All right.
Expand your vocabulary, especially in Old English.
They both apply to women only.
Apparently
That's nice.
so.
All right.
Did I mention this is written in misogynistic Edwardian times? Anyway, moving on.
I thought you wanted slops, she said sulkily when I complained. Yes, said I, but not bedroom slops.
Oh dear.
She must have repeated my remark, which I admit was not the best of tastes, for Molly appeared to see what was amiss and took away that loathy bowlful that made me something decent. Then she fetched her pad and took my letters, and we carried on like that until I was better. Mrs. Leake was doing the cleaning, Molly was doing the food. I gave her Sally's key, which I wouldn't trust Mrs. Leake with, and although she might be honest enough, I was pretty certain her husband wasn't. He worked for Muckley as a general roustabout, and did any dirty work that was going, and there was plenty going in that firm, believe me. My asthma was changing its form. Instead of the acute attack with gaps in between, it was becoming less acute and more chronic. I wheezed pretty nearly all the time now, but the attacks were less severe. I don't know which form of asthma I prefer. I suppose the one I don't happen to have at the moment. Scotty's influenza had turned to pneumonia, and they were very anxious about him. So what with one thing and another, we were a party of crocs. They say that trouble never came singularly, and I reckon they are right. I was beginning to get over the acute phase of the loss of Morgan. Time is a great healer and does the job whether we want it to or not. But there was nothing, either in time or eternity, that could fill the gap that was left in my life or make Dickford's existence tolerable to me. If the truth were known, I was drinking a dashed sight more than was good for me, but I did not think that anyone but the wine waiter at the George knew, and he used to talk to me like a father and bring me a lager when I ordered a whiskey and pretend he'd muddled my order.
Good man. The loss of Sally was a heavy blow, quite apart from the fact that she had been a dashed good soul. Mrs. Leake was a poor sort of creature. Any bed she made was a rag heap. Any fire she laid wouldn't light. She was always forgetting to fill up the coal scuttle, and if there is one thing I can't do is lug coal scuttles. I couldn't very well get Molly round to cart coal, and I couldn't sit in a fireless room all evening, so I used to go round to the commercial room at the George, and that got me drinking still more, for you can't very well spend the evening in a place like that and not pay for your footing. So I was making a mess of things when the curtain rang up for the grand finale. I was over in my quarters after lunch when my sister sent the maid down with a message to say there was someone at the house who wanted to see me. I went over, quite unsuspicious, and found my sister entertaining Muckley. I felt pretty surprised, for the natural thing was for him to have come to the office if he wanted to see me, not go intruding on the house, for he could hardly expect to be on calling terms with us. My sister was looking exactly like the wolf in the pantomime, getting ready to eat Little Red Riding Hood. I saw she was fearfully pleased about something, and wondering what in the world was afoot. I couldn't imagine what Muckley could have made her a present of that had pleased her so much. She soon explained, however. Mr. Muckley has come here to speak to us about his daughter. Stepdaughter, I corrected. He says you've seduced her, Wilfred. Good God, said I. It was the only thing I could think of and was so completely taken aback. Do you deny it? Of course I do. There's not a word of truth in it. You've been having her over in your rooms a great deal, said my sister, for which I could have kicked her, for it was the last thing she ought to have said under the circumstances, but she had too little sense and experience and knowledge of the world to know it. She has only been taking my letters while I was laid up, said I. You seem to have had a lot of letters lately, said she, especially late in the evening.
Oh, she's helpful.
Oh, stir it up, girl, eh?
As a matter of fact, Molly had been coming over and doing my supper for me and generally settling me for the night. As Mrs. Leake was there too, I had thought we were all right, but my sister was simply making Muckley a present of the situation without realizing in the least that she was what she was doing. And there was no way of stopping her, short of knocking her insensible once she had started on this tact. I mentioned Miss Leake. Yes, said Muckley, it was Mrs. Leake as been telling us what put me and me wife on your track. Then I saw what was afoot. I wondered whether Molly was a party to it, but instantly acquitted her. She wasn't that sort. I referred him to the Beadmore as a witness that was physically impossible for me to meddle with the girl when I had asthma. I don't see what he can know about it, as he wasn't there, said my sister. And anyway, you men always stick up for each other. There was a knock on the door, and in came Molly, notebook in hand. I'm sorry to have been so long, she said, but there was someone on the phone for Mr. Scott. I guessed my sister had sent for her in my name as if I messaged to have her come to me. She looked at Muckley, and by the way she looked at him, I saw that although she was surprised to see him in the drawing room, she knew what was afoot all right. I could see her square her shoulders and brace herself to meet it. She was a good, plucked kid. Miss Coke, I said, your stepfather has been complaining of my conduct towards you. Have you any complaints to make about it? None, she said. They never have, said Muckley. All the same, she's lost her reputation, even if there ain't no more unpleasant consequences, and me and her mother have got to live it down. What about it, Mr. Maxwell? Yes, said my sister. What are you going to do about it, Wilfred? I knew what was coming all right, even if she didn't, and nothing would suit me better than to get Muckley to make his demands in front of a witness if I could possibly lure him into the trap. Well, what do you want me to do about it, Muckley? Are you willing to marry her? Said Muckley. Yes, I said. It was the last thing they expected. A gasp went round the room and was echoed from the hall where the servants were listening. It was also the last thing Muckley wanted. He never thought for a moment I had been up to any hanky-panky with Molly. I am perfectly certain, and wouldn't have cared if I had. So it spiked his guns nicely, as he couldn't very well claim compensation in that face. In the face of that. Okay, all right.
My sister's reaction was too funny for words. She'd been all on the side of the angels when it was a question of immorality, but she went straight up in the air at the idea of righting the wrong. I don't suppose such a possibility had ever entered her head. She's extraordinarily obtuse in some ways. You can't possibly do that, Wilfred, she said, very tartly indeed. Why not? Said I. You can't afford it, said she. Can't we economise? I said, pulling her leg. No, we can't, said she. You'll have to if I dock your allowance, said I. She glared at me as if she could have killed me. I always expect she will some day. Do you expect me to share my home with her? She said, with a theoretical. Yes, theatrical.
There
Get the
you
word
go.
right.
Theatrical.
Sweep of her hand towards Molly, who stood still as a statue beside the
I
door.
imagine she's freaked out.
Certainly not, said I. I shouldn't dream of asking my wife to share her home with anybody. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, you can't afford to keep two homes going, Wilfred, that's quite certain. I shall have to, during Mother's lifetime, I said. You'll get into debt. You will have to economise here. I shan't do any different what I've always done. You will get £1 a week and a push if you give any trouble. He said.
Oh, push, like mean you get to
like
leave.
You get kicked out. I'm willing to look after Mother, but I'm not obliged to do any more than keep you off the rates.
Ooh.
I have never seen anything look as mad as my sister outside an asylum. It has always amazed me that I put up with her nonsense so long and never used the power of the purse over her before. Muckley was obviously enjoying it all hugely. What poor Molly was feeling over this fracas I do not know, for her face was like a mask. It was impossible for me to throw Muckley out, as he was a great bruiser of a brute, twice my size. So I thought that as my sister had let him in, she could jolly well get rid of him. I don't lay any claims to chivalry where she is concerned. She twisted my tail too hard and too often when she had the upper hand.
I walked across the room and put my hand on Molly's shoulder. Come along, I said, and opened the door and pushed her out in front of me. Pushed her right into the arms of the crook, in fact, who together with the parlour maid and a little sort of between creature were all outside on a mat, for the last thing they were expecting was for the interview to break up so abruptly. Take a month's notice, the lot of you, I said, and still shoving Molly ahead of me, went down the passage that led to the offices. She sat down at her desk, and I sat down at mine, and we looked at each other. That's torn it, I said. Yes, she said, he can't do anything in the face of that, but if you don't mind, Mr. Maxwell, I'd like to get off as soon as you can spare me. You mean you want to leave, I said. Yes, she said, I can't possibly stop on. The maids heard everything, and they'll push this all over town. I put my head in my hands. I was absolutely sick at heart. I felt that not only had I messed things up for the girl, but I had let Scotty down so horribly. I ought to have had more sense than to let her come over to my quarters at all. It had seemed to me so obvious that when I was in such a condition that she or Mrs. Leake had to hoist me up on my pillows when I slipped down, I couldn't be suspected of wanting to do anybody any harm. I wondered how in the world I was to face Scotty, coming back after an illness to this mess up, for I knew from the way Molly had all the threads in her hands that Scotty must have relied on her tremendously. As for me, I shouldn't know where to look for a thing without her. And there was the domestic problem of my bachelor establishment. Bad as Miss Leake was, she was better than nothing. She would certainly have to be all fired for this day's work, and then and there would be nothing. If Molly had not been able to find me another woman to replace the unsavory Leake creature, it was improbable I should be able to find one for myself. It seemed to me that life was an all-in wrestling match without a referee. It had fairly got me down. I felt deadly ill, too, for in my heart it was bothering me, owing to the row we had just been having. Then I heard a kind of suppressed squeak and looked up, and there was Molly weeping. I went over and sat down beside her and put my arm around her. It was all that I could do. I was just as done as she was. Then the town hall clock struck 3, and I got up in a hurry, for I had an auction at the assembly room at 3.
Oh dear, we'll finish the chapter.
More haste, less speed. I got up too quickly, and now I couldn't get my breath, and could only lean up against Molly's desk and fight for it. Molly looked at me, and then she took up the telephone and rang the other auctioneer in town and asked them if they could arrange to take the auction for me, and I couldn't argue because I couldn't speak. We may as well have been hung for a sheep as a lamb. We may as well
be hung for a sheep as a lamb. In other words, we might as well do something really wrong if we're going to do something wrong.
Okay. Oh, hung for a sheep.
Yeah.
Like much more money's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Said Molly, when the worst of the attack was past, and took me by the arm and walked me slowly over to my own quarters and put me to bed. Then she got the Beadmore to me, and Beadmore doped me.
Beadmore's the doctor.
Yes.
Chapter 28.
This is so hard to read.
Isn't it? It's all in the first person, and the phrasing is just odd, isn't it?
And crazy words.
Yes, I know. Hey, we're learning some new words.
Chapter 28.
Chapter 28. I woke up next morning still feeling pretty rotten. It was getting on for 11. I had overslept, having no Sally to call me, and Mrs. Leake had very wisely not shown up. I rang up the office to see how they were getting on. One of the clerks in the outer office answered me and said they were getting on all right. I asked if Miss Coke were there, and he said yes, she was there, dealing with a client. I got into some clothes and ambled round to the George and had brunch. I thought I should catch Molly at the office, as she always left after the others, but when I got there she had cleared out with the rest. I wanted to have a word with her and see how she was faring, for I thought things might be a bit sticky for her at home, and I reckoned that if her fiver would unstick them, it would be money well spent. It was Saturday, so she wouldn't be back at the office after lunch, but I knew that Muckley would be at the local dog races, which started at 3, at which he was a leading light. So I went back to my place to wait till he should be out of the way, and then reckoned I would drop round and have a word with Molly and her mother, and tell them how awfully sorry I was about everything, and see if there was anything I could do towards straightening things out. When I got back to my own quarters, they were, of course, exactly as I had left them when I rolled out of bed that morning. So I went back to the empty offices, but the fires were out there too by now. So I went on to the George and had a drink or two in the saloon bar to kill time till Muckley would have gone to the dogs. Thus does a lot of trouble start in towns like ours. Muckley wasn't the only one going to the dogs. When I knew by the cheering that things had got going at the greyhound track, I left the bar only to find I had taken more than I'd meant to. I don't say that I couldn't walk all right, but I certainly would not have cared to drive a car. So I decided to stroll about a bit till the church spire had straightened out and steadied down before going to call on Molly and her mother. I also indulged in the good old deacon's remedy of a pennyworth of peppermints. This brought me in touch with a synthetic charmer in the bonbon box where my old dominie had met his doom. And before I left, I had pulled her peroxide curls and promised her a run in my car.
What?
That's the
chocolatier lady?
Yes, I think so.
Oh.
Go on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's you.
When I got out into the fresh air, I spat ceremonially in the gutter and decided that I had better not stroll around the town any more in case worse befell me. I fetched from the office the key of the house the cedar came from, and I decided I would occupy my idle hands by inspecting my property. All the furniture was gone, save some of the choicier bits I had bought at the sale, which was good, which stood,
disconsolately. Sadly.
How does a chair sit disconsolately?
It stood. It's wood that stood disconsolately.
Along the walls, irregularly spaced out by the gaps left by their departed comrades. In the center of the floor, in the downstairs rooms, were various bits I had picked up at various other auctions, and that I had dumped in here for storage, having in mind some dim idea of making the place into one of those antique shops which imitate a dwelling house, yeah. Imitate a dwelling house, and they're fashionable nowadays, or perhaps, if the truth were known, from the sheer jackdaw
acquisitiveness. He can't help getting stuff. He's got to get stuff.
For there were some nice bits among them that nothing would have induced me to part with. The inside of the windows was stuck up with newspaper to keep out the sun, and in the dim light the rooms looked like scenes of those traditional card parties that end up in a murder and then are locked up for years for fear of the ghosts. I soon had enough of looking round the house and went out into the garden. The sky was just getting pink in the west for early winter sunset, and the low light came through the tops of the leafless trees into the rectangular walled garden that Queen Anne considered the correct thing. I had not thought it a particularly promising garden when I had seen it all overgrown with weeds and greenery at midsummer, but now in its leafless bareness it revealed all sorts of treasure that had been smothered by them. There was yellow jasmine against a mellow brick, and brushes of winter sweets scenting the whole garden, and to my immense surprise, parties of little irises among their glass-like leaves, palest mauve, deepest blue, and velvety black and green. They were the nearest thing to orchis that I've ever seen, and looked as if their proper place was in a hothouse, but here they were, having the January day, and getting the best of it, too, from the looks of them. So I picked a bunch for Molly and her mother, together with some winter sweets, which I thought might be acceptable on Muckley's premises. Then I went round to make my call. Mrs. Muckley opened the door to me, looking, I thought, very surprised to see me. I wondered what version of the affair had been given to her. I tendered my floral offering, and she asked me in and took me through into the living room kitchen behind the shop, apologizing for not taking me up to the drawing room, on the grounds that she couldn't manage the stairs. I replied that I wasn't particularly good at them either, and we swapped symptoms for a few minutes and got acquainted.
I broke the ice by putting my foot through it in my usual jerky manner and told her I was glad to have a chance to see her alone, as I wanted to talk to her about Molly, and asked her if she knew what was afoot. She said she did. I asked her, would she accept my assurance that Molly and I had behaved ourselves? She said that she was quite satisfied on that point, but that we had been uncommonly foolish and had only ourselves to thank for what had happened. And I blame Molly more than you, she said, for you were ill and perhaps did not realise these things, but I warned Molly over and over again of the risk she was running, but she would do it. Then I realised what I had not realised before, that Molly had not blundered into things blindly, as I had, but had taken her risk with her eyes open rather than leave me stranded. And I should have been very badly stranded if she hadn't have done so, as nurses were unobtainable owing to the influenza epidemic that was going on. I told Mrs. Muckley this, and she offered no comment, and a silence fell between us, which I did some pretty rapid thinking. Well now, I said to her at length, what is the position with regard to your daughter? I told your husband I was willing to marry her if she wanted me to, but does she want me to? She has given me no indication of her attitude in the matter. Molly did not take your words seriously, Mr. Maxwell, and she would be the last girl in the world to hold you to them if you did not mean them. Well, has she got any other views for herself?
Oh.
How is she placed? How, for that matter, are you both placed, since I have been capsizing things for you? I've got cancer, and it cannot be very much longer now. After that, Molly will be homeless. She cannot live on the 25 shillings a week Mr. Scott pays her. My God, said I, is that all we pay her? Why, she runs the business. Yes, she could have got much better posts than that if she'd been willing to take them. The Argus would have given her £3 a week, but she would not take it. Why ever not? Mrs. Muckley did not answer.
Oh, perhaps Molly's had a crush on him for a while.
I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
I will certainly see that she gets a living wage, I said. But she was saying yesterday that she wanted to leave. Mrs. Muckley still kept silent. Well, Mrs. Muckley, I said, I'll marry her if she wants me to, but I shouldn't have thought I was any catch. She could do a dash sight better than a wreck like me, old enough to be her uncle. Hasn't she got anyone else in view? We have got some very decent lads in the office, and they treat her like a queen. There has never been anyone except you, Mr. Maxwell, since you gave her that pink sugar mouse, when you left the school.
Oh my goodness, she's carried a candle for him this whole
Good
time.
Lord, said I, in a state of utter consternation. And then Molly herself walked in and looked as if she could have gone over backwards at the sight of me. I looked at Mrs. Muckley, and Mrs. Muckley looked at me, and her eyes had the curious expression that I'd seen before when people are getting ready to cross the great divide, as if they could see right into the heart of things, and I knew at last what was worthwhile and what wasn't. I went up to Molly and took her hand. I've come round to see your mother. What your mother has to say to me, Molly. I said I have never called her anything except Miss Coke before. I have no more to say to him than I have already said. You two must settle things between you, said Mrs. Muckley, and rose up and left the room with her slow, painful, stooping walk, and I was left alone with Molly. Molly loosened her coat and sat down in the chair her mother had vacated, and looked at me questioningly. I felt that frankness was the only thing. It was no use beating around the bush, even if I had any talent in that direction, which I have not. I asked her how old she was. She told me 24. I told her I was 36. Now, 12 years that's not terrible.
Yeah, it's significant, but
yeah,
not terrible.
I also told her that I'd been pulling my sister's leg over the question of expense, and that I could perfectly well afford to marry if I wanted to, provided everybody was willing to be reasonable. But, I said, there are certain things you ought to know before you come to a decision. And I started to tell her about Morgan. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I had no idea it was going to be as difficult as it was. And I got in a most fearful muddle and made Morgan sound like a harlot through trying to keep the supernatural element out of it, which I thought Molly wouldn't understand. Then everything began to come back to me through talking about it, and I forgot who my audience was and told Molly the blinking lot. Everything I had bottled up got loose, and I ended up by breaking down completely. It was an odd way of proposing.
Then Molly did what Morgan had done and came and sat on the arm of my chair and put her arm around me. I know you love her, she said, but I think you need me, so I'll marry you. Then a tremendous hullabaloo started up outside as Muckley came home unexpectedly and Mrs. Muckley tried to head him off from the living room. I reacted into one of my tantrums and went out and told him exactly what I thought of him in the most unparliamentary language, and he put himself in a fighting attitude and dared me to hit him. Of course I daren't hit you, I said. I'm not such a fool as to try, but I can hit your business, and will too if I have any trouble with you. And I told him clearly, concisely and conclusively exactly where his back premises contravened the building laws and what it would cost to bring them into line with the requirements if someone laid an information. He shut up and cleared out, and I have never had any more trouble with him from that day to this. I may not be one of the bulldog breed, but I'm a pretty good hand at a cat fight. Then I returned in triumph to the living room, where Molly and Mrs. Muckley were all of a doodah, thinking I'd be murdered, or at least badly knocked about. Frankly, I can't think why I wasn't, for Muckley had that reputation. I was feeling distinctly pleased with myself, for it was no mean achievement to throw a brute the size of Muckley supperless out of his own house, and with that, and having got my trouble off my chest to Molly, I was beginning to feel better than I had done since I had lost Morgan. So I kissed Mrs. Muckley and was officially accepted as prospective son-in-law, and we all sat down to supper. And I told them some of my yarns, including the one about the friendly girls and the temperance shandygaff, and they loved it. And it was only after I got home that I remembered that I had forgotten to kiss Molly. While we were having supper, I noticed a kind of moaning, wailing noise that apparently had been going on for some time, but I hadn't paid any attention to it amid all the alarms and excursions. What in the world's that? I asked. It's the calves in the slaughter shed, said Mrs. Muckley. My husband ought not to have left them over the weekend. They have to be fasted before they're killed. I will go and give them a drink, said Molly. Perhaps they will quiet them. It did for a bit, but presently the poor little beasts started off again. I wasn't sorry to get out of earshot when I said good night and set off for home, leaving Molly to put her mother to bed.
That's a horrible place, poor Molly. As I walked back through the frosty starlight, I thought of the conditions under which that girl lived. She had all of the housework to do now her mother was helpless, and got up God knows what time to do it before she came to the office. At midday she went home and gave the demon Muckley his dinner, and then she came back to put in overtime for Scotty, who worked her like a donkey. Then she was up with her mother every hour or two through the night. At weekends she did Muckley's books and a bit of extra housework. Muckley came home drunk fairly frequently and knocked them both about impartially, and week in and week out throughout the year, with never a holiday since Mrs. Muckley had married him, they lived amid the sight and sounds and smells of the slaughter yard. She had married him for the sake of a home for herself and Molly, and he had married her for the sake of a little bit of capital that came from the sale of the school and that had set him up in his beastly business. My old dominie had hanged himself with his braces in a common lodging house in Bristol when his synthetic charmer left him after his money came to an end. She had something to answer for, had that girl. So that was like his girlfriend, or?
I'm trying to think who his old dominie was.
Well, Molly's father, real father. Then I fell to wondering why old Coke had abandoned a decent job and a decent wife to go off with a flamboyant creature from the bonbon box, whom even we youngsters had thought was pretty awful. He was an Oxford B.A., and when he wasn't in a bad temper, his manners were those of a gentleman, but evidently his tastes weren't, or he wouldn't have cottoned on to the bonbon boxer.
I get it. So
he had an
deserted
affair,
his wife and went off with
and
this.
then she dumped him and he killed himself.
And he killed himself. Right. I'm with you now.
But what an awkward way to say that.
Yes.
By this time I had arrived at my own door, and I reckoned the best thing I could do was to go straight to bed and shut my eyes to the Angian stables till the morning, and then shift my digs to the George till Molly was ready to marry me. But when I got upstairs, I found that everything had been cleared up, and a fire lit and banked with slack, and I knew why it was that Molly had been out when I called. I reckoned that it wasn't Molly who was getting the best of the bargain for the forthcoming marriage, even if I had been a well-to-do eligible, I was properly supposed to be, which anyone who had inside information knew decidedly I wasn't. Next morning, when I arrived at the office, there was Molly at her desk as usual, ready to take my letters. I went over and patted her on the back, I was too shy to kiss her in cold blood, and gave her my signet ring so she would have something to show for her engagement. She thanked me and put it on her finger, and we tackled the correspondences. I told her of my plans to move to the George, and she said no, it was a very bad one, and I asked her why. She wouldn't give me a reason. She said that her mother and she hoped I would come and have supper with them whenever I wanted to, as Muckley was never in the evenings.
I asked her, what about coping with the housework? And she said that 4 tenants was a ridiculous allowance for a house the size of ours, and they ought to do it on their heads or explain the reason why, and that I was the master of the house and it was for me to give my orders. It had never struck me that way before, and I thought it rather a bright idea. So I went down to our kitchen premises and rounded up the staff. I found that my sister had really engaged those I had sacked, and they were very saucy in consequence. all except the tweenie, who was an orphan from an orphanage and didn't know whether she stood on her head or her heels. They told me that they worked for my sister, not for me. I told them that they could work for her as much as they liked, but there would be no wages for it unless they minded their P's and Q's when I spoke to them. Then I re-engaged the tweenie and led her off, dustpan in hand, and handed her over to Molly. I went round to have supper with Molly and Mrs. Muckley that evening. As soon as I set eyes on Mrs. Muckley, I saw there was a change in her. I couldn't define what it was, but it seemed to me as if she kind of sat back and let go, now that she knew Molly would be cared for. I felt certain she wasn't going to last long. When Molly was out of the room, seeing to supper, Mrs. Muckley called me over and took my hand in hers and asked me if I would promise her to stop drinking. I nearly dropped. I had no idea that anyone except the wine waiter at the George knew I was doing it. Do you imagine you can do what you're doing in a town like this and no one know? Said she. I felt deadly sick about it. I don't care about public opinion in the ordinary way.
Why are you whispering?
I don't care about public opinion in the ordinary way because the public opinion of a place like Dickford is too futile for words. But letting Scotty in for a scandal at the office and giving way to drink were two things I was genuinely ashamed of, and it got me on the raw that they should have come out. Then in came Molly with the supper, and she saw that something had upset me, and she went for her mother like a tigress. She said she wouldn't have me scolded, and I wasn't in a fit state to stand it, and that she got me well in hand and could manage me perfectly, and there was no occasion for anxiety. And all this from Molly, who had never said anything except yes, Mrs. Maxwell, and Mr. Maxwell, and no, Mr. Maxwell, to me at the office. I told Molly she needn't worry. I had given her mother my promise, and I would keep it. I did too. But it gave me a pretty thorough square when I found out how hard it was to keep it. If Molly had not taken me round to Beardmore and made me take him into my confidence, I doubt I should have kept it.
I asked Molly about every 2 hours for the next few days if she still wanted to go on with the marriage, and she said that if I jilted her, she would sue me for breach of promise and make me stick it. Not having been on the booze very long, I got off comparatively lightly, but I am sorry for the poor devils who are experienced inebriates. As I had foreseen, Mrs. Muckley went downhill rapidly, and one evening when I was there, she sent Molly out of the room and asked me when the wedding was to be, and where I proposed to Molly after I had married her.
Proposed to put Molly after I married her.
Oh, okay, where I proposed to put Molly after I married her. I said that I proposed to make my home at Cedar House and leave my mother in possession of the old house during her lifetime, even if it meant going into capital a bit. She asked me how long it would take to get Cedar House ready, and I said I thought about 3 months. She said it was too long for her. Couldn't I take Molly sooner? I said I'd take her any time she liked if she didn't mind camping out in my quarters. Mrs. Muckley said that was a great weight off her mind. Could I get her a letter for the hospital? And she couldn't hang on any longer. I asked her when she wanted to go. She said that wasn't for her to say. She'd have to go when there was a bed. I told her to leave it to me. If she could be ready tomorrow morning, I'd see to the shifting of her. She said she didn't see how I could be sure, but she'd be ready just in case. The next morning I came round with my car bright and early, as arranged, and took her to the nursing home, where I had got a room for Molly too, so she could end her days in comfort. She was a sweet soul. Muckley was left to wrestle with the local servant problem that we had already found intractable. Mrs. Muckley died that day fortnight. So 2 weeks?
2 weeks. Mm-hmm.
Molly and I were both with her when she went. She said she died happy leaving Molly in my care. I thought that if she knew that what I was going through trying to keep off the whiskey, with Molly hanging on to me to keep me from doing something desperate, she would have thought the boot was on the other leg. I gave the town a turn to see me in topper and tails, riding with Molly and Muckley and a moldy aunt in the front coach of the funeral. They had been perfectly ready to believe the scandal, but had never credited the rumors of the engagement. As we passed our house, I noticed that the blinds of my sister's rooms were down, as well as those in the rest of the house, which had been drawn by my orders. I thought this was a sign of grace, but I learned afterwards that she had developed a sick headache out of pure
Chagrin.
Chagrin?
Yep.
Okay. When she learnt that I was attending the funeral as one of the family and had vomited her dinner, rather a left-handed tribute, but nonetheless a tribute. Such strange writing.
Indeed.
And I'm a little lost as to how this fits into the Kabbalah, but we'll see.
We'll see. I took Molly to see my mother, and Mother mistook her for a friendly girl and asked her if she'd been confirmed and whether she was willing to go into service. However, she was quite pleasant to her, and she mightn't have been if she'd have known what was the prospective daughter-in-law. So all's well that ends well. Then I went and saw the vicar. He was high and disliked the idea of a wedding in Lent. I asked him, did he expect us to live in sin till after Easter? Anyway, we weren't going to, and if he wouldn't do the job, we patronised the rival show at the registry office. So he climbed down and said he didn't mind so much if it was quiet. I said I could bet it would be quiet under the circumstances. He said that in his opinion I was treating my sister exceedingly badly. I said it was a free country, and he had a perfect right to his opinion. The matron of the nursing home insisted that the wedding should take place from there, and the nurses fairly spread themselves, for they all loved Molly. We had an awfully funny mixed bag of guests. My mother was not expected, as she would not have been out the house for years. My sister was asked, but she wouldn't say whether she would or whether she wouldn't. We hoped to God she wouldn't, and in the end she didn't. I asked the Treths, and Molly asked the mouldy aunt and a couple of girlfriends. The wine waiter from the George turned up at church, and we took him back with us to the wedding breakfast at the nursing home. Scotty crawled out very shakily to be best man at the risk of his life, and went straight back to bed again after the service. He was awfully pleased about it, to my immense astonishment, for it meant he would have to break in a new secretary. I took Molly to the Grand at Dickmouth for a weekend for the honeymoon, which was all that could be spared from the business in the absence of Scotty, and went down with a go of asthma almost as soon as I set foot inside the doors. Some honeymoon for the child. I brought her back as soon as I was fit to move, perhaps a bit sooner if the truth were known. In order to get to my quarters, where we were all to live till Cedar House was ready, we had to go through our hall. Now, our house is a long 2-storey double-fronted affair, with the offices on the right of the front door and the living quarters on the left. The street door stands perpetually open, and the real front door is just inside the hall, facing the door leading to the offices. As we drove into the square, I saw our chief clerk on the corner signalling to me, so I pulled up to hear what he had to say. He told me that my sister was raising hell.
Said he thought she was off her head. The clerks had wanted to give us a welcome home, but he saw that there was going to be trouble, and he had judged that the most humane thing he could do was to shut up shop and clear everybody off and leave us to wash our dirty linen as privately as might be. I entirely agreed with him, and ran Molly and him round to his little house to wait till the row was over. Then I went back to tackle my sister. As soon as she heard my key in the door, she came out and let fly, called me a thief and a liar, called Molly a common prostitute, and said I'd catch VD from her. Didn't I thank God Molly wasn't there? I am never in the sweetest of tempers after a go of asthma, and I hit Ethel a backhander across the mouth, a la Muckley, and knocked her flying. Then I fetched the bricklayer and bricked up the door and brought my bride home in peace. However, it wasn't a peaceful night, for I had more asthma and a heart attack, as I always do after a row. You guys have heart attacks?
I'm thinking this might be different, like it's just pain in the heart, not actually, I don't know, whatever.
Some homecoming for the child. My sister had to shift the ash bins and use the back door and explain herself as best she could to visitors. I never spoke to her again. Next day, the solicitor she and my mother always go to, a gentleman for whom I have no use, sent for me to come and see him. It seemed that my sister had allowed the servants up from the kitchen to see the fun, so there was a witness to the assault. Ethel had a cut lip. For the matter of that, I had cut knuckles. Then he asked me what settlements I was prepared to make on my sister now I was married. I said, none. They could go on as they were during my mother's lifetime, and then I would give Ethel £3 a week to live on anywhere except Dickford. He said she wouldn't accept that. I said she could take it or leave it, and if she made any more trouble, she wouldn't get that. He offered me a document to sign, which I settled the house on her, all the furniture, and half of my interest in the business. Lying beside it on his desk was an application form for a summons. I told him to go to hell. The next day I was sued with a summons for assault. My sister had me in front of local beaks along with the drunks and folks who had been riding bikes without lights and keeping dogs without licenses. The servants gave their evidence to the greatest gusto. According to them, I had knocked my sister down and kicked her. The only difficulty was that they could not agree where I had kicked her. Neither could she produce any footmarks, and if what they said was true, she ought to have looked like a human Dalmatian. So the magistrate discounted the footmarks, though they said, and quite rightly, that I had undoubtedly socked her on the jaw. So I was bound over to keep the peace.
Slap on the wrist, that is. Got no sentence at all, just bound over to keep the peace. Don't do it again! Oh, okay, fine. With the exception of a few of my pals, the town took sides with Ethel. In addition to which, Muckley seditiously spread a story of an enforced marriage. So we were sent to Coventry. Do you know what that means?
She's pregnant.
No, sent to Coventry means nobody will speak to them. You're ostracised.
Oh, nobody speaks to them.
Yeah,
Okay.
sent to Coventry, Molly and I. Now I had stopped drinking, there wasn't much for me to do at the club or the George, and Scotty carefully kept me away from clients lest they should feel their houses were polluted.
Wow.
The only person who stuck to Molly was the mouldy aunt. Even the two girlfriends faded after the assault. The mouldy aunt stuck closer than glue because we helped her a bit. And I don't know that she deserved it, but she certainly needed it. And perhaps it is the best claim that anyone can have.
Well, this is like a whole became a whole different book.
Oh my goodness gracious me. No, this is how we get, this is getting interesting. That has to be mine.
Okay.
Chapter 29, but we've
Right,
done an
so
hour.
we have 29, 30. There's still 3 chapters.
3 chapters.
We'll
It's
see how
possible we might get it done next time, but that's an hour gone.
we go. I know.
Wow.
But it's like a whole different weird book now.
I got to tell you though, I knew when she first appeared on the scene that Molly was going to be the one that he married. And I didn't know her name was Molly at that point then,
Oh,
but
'cause
because she's only been referred to as Scotty's secretary.
Because
I knew
Morgan wanted her to have a...
She'd held a candle for him since he gave her a
Grade school.
pink mouse at grade school. How about that then? So, and 12 years is not a massive difference, is it? You know?
Well, if she was 8 and he was 20...
Well, there is that. You know, but when people are in their 30s, I suppose it's all right. You know what I'm saying?
All right, me
then,
lovelies.
peoples. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So for the next thrilling instalment, look, a lot of people mashed the like button. That's really good.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So for the next thrilling instalment, hopefully it'll be next week with Spot of Luck and a following
See
wind.
how things go. This might be an entertaining few days for us, but we'll hang in there.
Yes, it's going to be a fun week. But there you go. We got this in. So thank you.
guys.
Have
Thank
a
you
wonderful
all.
evening. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.